although just while I remember, big welcome and hello to everybody who has joined us this morning, and welcome to an audience with Elizabeth Vega. My name's Georgina Mackey and I am the Entrepreneur Development Manager for London and Brighton Accelerator Programmes, and I'm really pleased today to bring you this event. It's fantastic to welcome you all, both our entrepreneurs on our current programme, anybody, any kind of public guests as well, and any budding entrepreneurs out there. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's joined, and to kind of all of our guests who are joining the event today. So I thought I'd run through a little bit about our programs for those who are interested. So at NatWest we run a number of programs to support entrepreneurs. So from everything from kind of, throughout school, all the way kind of to the high growth businesses. We do all that we can to support entrepreneurs in our local communities. And then I'll just run through some of our programs here. So we've got the Dream Bigger. So that's going into schools and colleges to teach you kind of the principles of entrepreneurship, and kind of get school children thinking about entrepreneurship and starting their own business as a possible career path. We have the Business Builder program, which is fantastic for early stage startups, and it's great to join at any time and get the free kind of resources and support, the variety of digital content from workshops, modules, video modules, and events that you can also tap into there. Our core accelerator program is kind of where we started, but we run that through 12 accelerator hubs or incubators across the UK, and within that we run a 6-month rolling program of support for entrepreneurs who have already kind of kicked off their journey but looking to take their business to the next level. We then come to the next level program, which is for much more kind of high growth businesses who are really kind of growing quite exponentially. More recently, we've taken our core accelerator program and specialised it in a little bit with some fintech and climate streams as well. So there's loads going on, loads of support at NatWest for entrepreneurs. So please do get in touch if you would want to kind of find out more information, and perhaps we'll be able to touch on that later. But without further ado, I'd like to invite our guest and say hello to our guest Elizabeth Vega. So I'll do a quick introduction, Elizabeth, just so everyone can know, but then we'll get started. So we're joined by the inspirational Elizabeth as OBE. As CEO of Informed Solutions, Elizabeth has over 30 years experience working executive and leadership level, heading and advising on complex change and digital transformation programs for globally recognised and respected organisations. A women in tech pioneer, Elizabeth was the first person to be elected director at a leading technology trade associations in both the UK and Australia with Tech UK, where she was a main board member for 8 years and serving 2 terms as National Deputy Chair of the Australian Information Industry Association. In October 2020, Elizabeth was awarded the title of OBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours. Huge congratulations. Elizabeth also holds a variety of high-profile industry representative roles, including member of the UK Government Cabinet Office Small and Medium Business Panel, chair of the Culture and Capability Working Group, and member of the Public Sector Procurement Innovation Panel, where she champions the creation of diverse, innovative and competitive supplier marketplaces. As a trusted and respected advisor, Elizabeth leverages her experience, insights and industry through thought leadership to advocate for better solutions to the challenges that government, businesses and the economy and our society faces. So welcome, Elizabeth. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for that, Georgina.
I'm sure you've had that yourself several times. But I'd like to hear, from you, how are you doing? And I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of, your journey so far to kick off.
Well, thank you, Georgina. Greg, thank you so much for inviting me as well. I really do appreciate the chance to speak to some of the ambitious entrepreneurs in your program, but also some of your other guests, which I understand have also booked on. Well, I'm happy to share sort of our experiences over the last 20 odd years. I mean, entrepreneurship is a very personal journey, and some people are looking for serial entrepreneur opportunities, and other people are more are looking for to actually build and grow and scale up their own businesses. And I'm in the latter category. So this is my second company. I had one in Australia, and then I pivoted to the UK, and then I exited the Australian company because it was 1992, and we had pretty massive recession, if people remember, in the UK at the time. So we're actually the product of a very large recession. That's where we started off. And so no one should ever be daunted by that. I only half jokingly say the only way is up. so so that's hopefully what I can share today. um, Greg, Georgina, are you happy for me to just continue with some of the barriers that we've encountered on the way, and the things that, as a personal experience, how we overcame some of those?
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that, Elizabeth. I think, going into, your experience and journey so far would be a great way to kick off this session. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good. Well, what I'll do is I'll go through what are considered the 5 key barriers to growth and to scaling up, and I can share some of our experiences. Now, it depends on what your own business is. Ours is obviously in the digital and IT space, and the large transformational change, business change space. So I can, the decisions we made at the time will be right for our type of business, but it gives you some insight as to how we approached some of the traditional barriers that companies have as they grow. And then also, I'm going to share one other ingredient, which I think is really, really important for modernization. And if you want to not just scale, but to be really agile and adaptive and responsive to uncertain market conditions. So if I may, the first one is really access to markets and opportunities. As a startup and a scale up, you need to make sure that you've got a really good pipeline of business, and you have access to the right types of opportunities that will give you good profitable business that actually enable you to build your capability and your reputation, and that you can leverage your growth through. So the first thing I'll say is, even when you're running your business, and I know that there will be lots of operational issues, please remember to build your network. It's really important. Cold calling is nowhere near as effective as just energizing your network or getting someone to introduce you. It also shortens the time scale to those opportunities actually realizing. The other thing that we did as we were getting known is we compete for business we know that we will not win. But what you can do is you get feedback. So you ask respectfully and persistently, even if your proposal isn't taken forward and you don't win the contract, you ask for what I call the consolation prize. I tend to use a little bit of naughty humor, being quite Aussie. And I'll say, okay, well, as a minimum, could our consolation prize be really be just really high quality feedback? We'd love to learn. We genuinely do want to work with you. We understand that we didn't win this particular contract, but we want to do better next time, and we would like the opportunity to get contracts in the future. So please tell us how to do that. And you'd be surprised to see that most people are generous enough to do that, and that gives you the foot in the door to learn and to improve both your product, your services, and your proposition. How you actually are looking to shape that proposal to that particular client. The other thing that we did as we started scaling is we wanted to be taken seriously as a company. And we invested in getting accredited systems. So over the years now, we've obviously been around for a while, and we're highly accredited. But we started off with ISO 9001. We then demonstrated that we're a company with purpose beyond profit, and we got ISO 14000, which 9001 is quality management. So we have really systematic quality management systems to evidence that we can do things reliably and with integrity in our processes. Then we were accredited to ISO 14001, which is environmental impact management, to show that we actually care, that it's not just about business at any cost, but it's about business, business responsible, ethical business. We then, because of the space that we're in, we work with very large, highly secure platforms. We invested in ISO 27001, which is cyber and information security, and also Cyber Essentials Plus to work with government. And most recently, we've developed a system based on ISO 4001, which is the modern standard for collaborative business partnerships, rather than the more traditional opaque supply chain management. So those are the things that we've done to have really good governance and to enable us to play at the top tables. We've done that progressively. We haven't gone big bang. We've built on the success of the previous one. We've let that one settle in, and then we've taken on the next priority. The other thing that we did is we realized that the government sector, the public sector marketplace, is a very big marketplace, and they're very good and timely as prompt payers. So we thought, well, we've historically been in the private sector, particularly the full energy mix, including nuclear, oil and gas traditionally, etc., and renewables as that marketplace started developing. But we also thought, you know what, the public sector market's a big playing field. So again, we invested quite systematically and quite methodically in understanding the market, getting connected, getting known, truthfully failing at quite a number of bids that we put in, but we learned, and that every time being the runner-up on a number of occasions helped to start actually being in first place. And we do very good business now in the public sector as well as in private. The other thing that we did is we actually started looking to win awards, get known, and get recognized independently. So not just our marketing literature says we're good at what we do, it's independently authenticated by industry peers. So we've won the Queen's Award for Innovation. We've won 4 awards in Australia, including the Definitive Public Sector Project for Australia Award. We also won a World IT Congress Award for excellence in emerging digital platforms. And that gives you the gold star. So even if you are not one of the big household names, it's a little bit like when you go and buy a bottle of wine. Sometimes you look at the gold stars and go, oh, wow, this one's won quite a few awards, and they're really reputable awards. And that is a way of compensating for when you are not one of the big household names. The other thing that we did is we've worked internationally now. We pivoted our company we've worked internationally with large clients for some time because we're servicing large corporations, but we actually set up 3 offices in Australia about 5 years ago, and we now have 24-hour 24/7 follow the sun operations, which allows us to service all of those global clients more easily, more cost effectively, and with less burden on our staff having to work shift. So that's how we actually looked at access to markets and opportunity. And the second barrier that I'll go through is access to talent and building capability. So how do you actually realize when you're executing your growth plans, how do you realize the ability to fulfill those? And in our sector, it's a real challenge because there is a real skills shortage around digital and IT. A number of reasons for that, which is not worth going into, but it is a genuine problem for scaling companies. And how do you attract that talent? So we have a skills shortage, particularly in digital sector. Staff are really expensive. Training is expensive, particularly the serious courses where you get professional accreditations. And poaching, regrettably, is very aggressive and is rife in the industry. So you tend to find that at one level, staff have very short tenures, and that creates certain instability within the business. When you have a serious project with a client and you're talking about a very large scale transformation project, which can take 2, 3 or more years, and you have a turnover of staff like that, you need to handle that, and we needed to handle that. So we said, well, how do we actually address that issue? And we started with a blank sheet of paper. In an ideal world, how would you do it? And we said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to develop a core staff, which is the backbone of the company. These people will be highly trained, highly accredited. We really invest in them, but they need to have certain personal characteristics. They need to be career people. They don't want to be part of the gig economy. That's a different relationship, though we have a lot of people that are contractors and alliance partners. However, it's very difficult to maintain that stability in the business and to maintain business continuity with your very large clients if you don't have key staff. So we recruit on that basis. We recruit for different types of personalities or different types of career ambitions for our core team. We do invest in them, and we have a real leadership program as well, real leadership development as well as practitioner excellence development. There are quite a number of career paths for people so that they can play to their own definitive strengths. What we've done also is, in order not just to hire the top talent and to really then invest in those people and make sure that they are at the top of the game, you have to be able to keep them, because they're going back to the fact that our marketplace has got certain characteristics, and poaching is very, very common. You need to create a culture. And the thing that actually creates loyalty and creates job satisfaction, of course, we pay our people well. But we actually create a workplace environment that is very empowering for them, and where they have a strong sense of belonging. And that's what we've done. We're a culture-based company, and our leaders, whenever we hire people, particularly more senior roles, they really need to be committed to team working, to their colleagues, and to the leadership values of the company, and championing that, and enshrining their own behaviors in that, so that we have congruence. What people say and how people behave is consistent, and that is what gives our culture authenticity. And it's not for everybody. There is a genuine, unvarnished transparency in the company that a lot of people don't feel comfortable with, and yet, it really works for us, particularly given the type of work we do, which is high risk innovation projects at very large scale. We need to have that absolute honesty with each other, and so that's ingrained in our culture. And it's not for everybody, but those people that really do well with us, they stay with us, and that solved our particular problem in that way. Going back to the skills development, you can't just go be a shopper. So I use a few vernacular analogies, and excuse me for that. Our market has gotten into the habit of thinking, I'm going to do a little trolley dash around the supermarket and just buy 2 architects and 3 user researchers. No, you have to actually be part of solving the problem. So we are very much invested in skills development and training and practitioner excellence. And we have a substantial training budget. And we've also got Informed Academy, which has been recognized as one of the great inspirations by the Prime Minister's office, in actual fact, during the recession. And so we have a very, very systematic program of upskilling people in both work readiness. So when we take on graduates, we prepare them for taking on professional responsibilities and great team working. We teach them to be good practitioners and all of the skills associated with that. And if it's their career path, we also help them develop leadership skills and be authentic leaders that know how to be of service to others. And again, that really helps build our company, but build up our people as well. It's a slower way than just hiring and putting lots of backsides on seats, and getting a headhunter to go out there and just fill up my team. And we do a combination of both. We do have a lot of contractors, very respected and valued contractors and associates, which are subject matter experts, and they complement and enhance our team, and we can scale up very rapidly to 200 or 300 people on one team alone if we need to, by virtue of our operating model. But our core team, the backbone of a company, provides stability in the client relationships and the commercial understandings. We hire graduates every year. So once you've got a company that has got good corporate infrastructure and you've got a stable team, you are ready to take on some graduates and skill them up and help integrate them, help them be productive, and help them really contribute to the business. And some of the young people we have are extraordinary, and they come up with brilliant ideas, stuff that really experienced people just don't know to think of, because graduates don't know any better. And sometimes, if you're open minded, you say, wow, that could really work. So we problem solve together, and we're very egalitarian. We're not a hierarchical organization, and a good idea comes from everybody and anybody. And as I said before, in 2011, we set up our what we then called the Personal and Professional Development Framework. And that was relaunched in 2015 as Informed Academy. And we now have a very mature development program, which includes 20 training and skills development partners, which do external courses as well as our own people. So that is how we've actually solved our problem, or in the process of solving our problem, about access to talent and building capability, because we couldn't have an over-reliance on the marketplace given the characteristics of the way that marketplace worked. The third barrier, substantial barrier to scaling up and growing, is actually having corporate infrastructure, office space, etc. And how do you commit to long-term contracts, for example, when you don't even know the shape of your business just yet, either because you're starting up, you're scaling, or you're pivoting your company and you're changing your operating model. So I'll talk primarily, I mean, we're an IT company, so, and I'm not being arrogant, but we have had not a lot of difficulties in sorting out our own tea. I think our clients will be pleased to know. But some of the challenges that we have had has been with office space. And because we're a very elastic company, we can scale up to hundreds of people per team, and then come back to the core of the company at the natural conclusion of that contract. We need to be really adaptive and responsive. So what we started off with is we used to take short-term leases of 1 to 2 years to provide core office space and facilities. Then we acquired, I'll be totally honest with you, acquired our 2 flagship offices, which is our headquarters in Greater Manchester, a grade 2-star listed building, because that enshrined the principles and values of our company, and I'll come back to that. And also our London offices, because we realized pretty quickly that the cost of having London offices on the Monopoly Board, which is in Westminster and St. James Park, was disproportionate, and we just decided that, and NatWest supported us with that, was actually to acquire our London offices. Our other city offices are actually sort of shorter to medium term leases of 2, maybe 3 years, where we get best value for that. The other thing we do is, for our elasticity, is we have serviced accommodation for our project teams. It allows us to very quickly set up project workspaces in whatever location we need, so that we can, if necessary, co-locate with clients or have a secure space. A lot of our projects are actually security secure, so they can't share space with perhaps other teams. So we do that by actually having serviced office accommodation. That is slightly more expensive, but it does give us that that agility. And that's what we've done with that. With IT, I would suggest that you don't look at necessarily having your own dedicated IT estate, unless, like us, you actually have the in-house capability. Do genuinely look at cloud-based services and subscription services. There are so many providers out there that can offer you a full stack solution. Have a look at that. It's more cost effective, and you don't have the administrative burden. So that's what we've done about business infrastructure, and particularly office space. The next one is finance. And I know I am on dangerous ground here, but I'm going to literally share our experiences on finance, and also looking at potential investors and partnerships. Okay, so the smart money always knows what it is investing in. So when you're looking for an investor, look for an investor that actually understands your market, and they see themselves as partnering within your business. Old investors, old style investors, would literally just give you the cash, and then they would potentially put someone on your board that would crack the whip. There are so many more modern ways of partnering and scaling up nowadays. And of course, the NatWest and Ulster and Royal Bank of Scotland group have got the sort of programs that we heard about before. Have a look for those programs. There are people that can help you on the journey and that can partner with you, as well as give you the funding. Understand how to become a really attractive investable business. All of us think our business is fantastic. We pour our hearts and souls into it. But actually, step out of your own mindset and look at other people's mindset and say, hey, if I was asking to invest in that business, what would I want from them? What sort of reassurances would I want from them? If you become, and if you make sure that you develop yourselves into one of the attractive investable businesses, there's a sort of a dry powder. The finance community say, I've got dry powder, I've got money to invest, but it's got to be in companies that show and that evidence that they're doing, and also they have the ability to think outside of just their own business and what others need from them. So that's my suggestion to you. Every single conversation you have with a potential investor, every single conversation that you have with another entrepreneur, and with people in accelerator programs like the ones that NatWest are running, they give you the opportunity to learn. Don't take it as rejection. Have the growth mindset and the opportunity mindset, and actually take those lessons away. Take them back into the business, learn how to improve your product, learn how to improve your services, and learn to improve your operating model, so that other people say, this is a serious business and I'm prepared to put my hat in the ring with them. That's how you master your craft as an entrepreneur. It's a life journey. It's not just the stuff that you learn on the chalk and talk sessions in a classroom. It's your life journey on how to master being a great entrepreneur. When the offers start and people start thinking about investing in you, it's very exciting and it opens a world of opportunities, but think long and hard about how much equity you're prepared to trade, and actually have those serious conversations. Don't just fold too quickly, but also don't play too hard to get. Actually be really realistic about what you're offering in exchange for the finance and the funding and the support that you're going to be receiving. And be a great partner. The same way that you expect your investor to partner with you in the business, you need to partner with them as well. So I would suggest that. As a female founder in a tech business in 1992 during a recession, raising finance for me at that time was actually not viable. Okay. There have been real challenges for women working in business, but it's been a perfect storm when you're talking about a tech business. So what I did is I bootstrapped my own business, and my background is large corporates. My management graduate training was Unilever, and then I worked for Hawker Siddeley, Hawker Pacific globally out of the US and Australasia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So I had the privilege of working for those organizations, and they taught me a lot. And then I joined Oracle. And again, that's heavy lifting tech and digital. And then I exited big corporate life and started off my own business. So I wasn't a complete novice, but I couldn't get finance, and particularly during the middle of a recession. So I bootstrapped that. But what I did do is I shaped my business model so that I would turn a profit in a year. I was really clear about that. Okay, it's not just about a hobby or lifestyle business, or just being a contractor and using that company as a vehicle. I needed to make sure that my business turned a profit within 1 year, and I knew how to do that because I'd already had P&L responsibilities in corporates, and that's what I did. And actually, that's what your investors will want as well. They'll want to know what timescale you are going to turn a profit and have income. So start thinking that way. Having had a good trading history, approached NatWest, and I was in the privileged position that I was offered some working capital and finance to acquire assets. And so my journey started, and we were able to start scaling up the business. And they have actually been our commercial bankers now for 28 years. I know, gosh, unbelievable. We've done the journey together. Since that time, we have developed a very robust business systems-based model, which I explained, which is based on international standards. We've built up a really formidable client base of corporates and government clients. We have won numerous prestigious industry awards across the UK, Australia, and globally at the World ICT Conference. We have got we've got processes to ensure a reliable pipeline of high quality business. And we've become a tier 1 supplier to large corporates and government departments. So we are a prime contractor, and we have got all the governance and the engineering to handle that. We've also developed a growing ecosystem of standout partners. We've got pretty high standards for partnering, as you might imagine, because we're the prime for that. And so there will need to be sort of flow through responsibilities and flow up responsibilities. And we're growing, but we're also profitable. So there have only ever been 2 years in our history that we've not turned a profit. So you need to make sure that your business model and your business plan factors all of those key ingredients in. It's not just the one-trick pony. Our track record has meant that our bank, which, banks have not historically had the greatest appetite for high-risk investment, but we are not a high-risk company anymore. We've been very thoughtful about making sure that we appealed to the kind of investors that don't want very large equity, that we are a well-run company that have options about investment, and therefore, we've retained our equity, we've got funding, and we now have access to project finance and growth finance through commercial banking as and when we need it. So that's been our journey on finance, and I'm hopefully not stealing anything, and I haven't got myself into too much trouble with our own bankers. Anyway. Right, so number 5, the last one, which is a traditional barrier to business growth, is leadership. I personally, this is my perception, and please understand that everyone has different different mindsets. So I only hire people I like, I respect, I trust, and if I look at that leader, I put myself, would I work for them? Okay. Because it's all very well to be a leader and you go, well, they're not going to be my problem. But if your people don't relate to your leader, you're going to lose your top talent. So when I hire anybody, I always think, would I work for them? Would they be a great colleague? I don't just look at people's skills. I'm not seduced by just their skills. I want to know what they are as a person and what kind of colleague they will be, because that creates a harmonious workplace. The other thing I do is I make sure that any new leaders that join us that have not been part of the journey with us as a graduate, they genuinely understand and accept the key tenets of leadership at Informed Solutions in our culture. They adopt those and they become a champion and a role model for those. That is how you build authenticity and congruence within your culture. Your clients have the same experience of leadership as your staff, your people, and your alliance partners. You need to be really clear about that. I'm a real people person, but there's also a side to me that communicates very clearly, consistently, and unambiguously what I expect from our leadership team. And if a leader lacks integrity, they lack commitment, they don't have good team working skills, or they don't show themselves to be competent, I move them on respectfully but quickly, because they will cause a lot of collateral damage within the business. I invest on the other side of that is we invest very, very much in particularly the leadership strand in mentoring, coaching, training, so that our leadership team really feel confident and prepared for the challenges that they've got to work through and face, and how to lead other people. Your leaders are the enablers of every area of your business, and if your leaders aren't up to the job, neither is your business. And I can't emphasize that enough. Also, on a personal level, we set up a weekly leaders touch point meeting so that we don't become disconnected from each other. We don't just produce it, we have a function within the company. And of course, each of us has got responsibilities and duties and we perform a function. But as colleagues and peers within the leadership team, we make sure that we create a safe space for leaders to just connect and talk to each other, because otherwise leadership becomes quite lonely. So that's our experience and my feedback on how to really develop a leadership culture, and not just a leadership that is based on command and control, but the one that is quite inclusive and supports diversity. The last point is on digital infrastructure. Now, this is not one of the traditionals. The Scale Up Institute does great reports every year on the barriers to growth and scaling up. And this is one that I would contribute. And you could laughingly say, well, I would say that because our specialism is digital transformation. But I can't emphasize enough how important digital infrastructure is to your ability to scale, to adapt, to be resilient, to be elastic. Okay, and to operate really well in uncertain market conditions. And the reason for that is because it gives you something that is enduring and that is, again, a backbone to your business alongside your people, not instead of your people. So become a digital business and have a digital strategy and roadmap for your growth at the time that you develop your blueprint, and at the time that you ask for finance. Okay, it makes digital infrastructure makes your business efficient as you grow, and it makes it less vulnerable. So your business admin and your support processes, if they're automated and digitized, become more consistent, more methodical. You can prove compliance, they're more efficient, and they're more auditable. If you've got quite demanding clients like we have audits twice a year. We have one mandatory audit in order to be able to maintain our international accreditations, but we have one voluntary audit to keep staff on their toes. I told you I was naughty. Okay, I then don't get to be the bad guy. It's the auditors that come in and open up everything and have a look at it. I'm the goodie. We also are able to produce management reports and performance dashboards really quickly and easily. It builds responsiveness. And if you go that extra step, you can even have them in real time. at your fingertips. You can have all the information you need about the operations of the company, or anywhere where you have perhaps a bottleneck. It helps your leadership team make the best possible decisions as well, because you're basing those decisions on data and on evidence, rather than just as well as perhaps their instincts and their judgment based on experience. Your operations, as I said before, become more elastic, resilient, more cost effective as you scale, and profitable, because your business growth doesn't automatically translate to having to increase your headcount on admin resources. You can actually increase your headcount on those resources that actually create value and can generate revenues for you, rather than you're having to scale up through additional admin staff just simply to turn the handle of the engineering of the business. Digital operations also help you mitigate the impact of staff moving on. In our sector, as I said before, there are quite short tenures, there's quite a high turnover of staff. So we are able to actually mitigate the negative impact of staff moving on, because the business and the process rules are built in to your digital infrastructure, and they don't require a heavy reliance on people that have been doing the job for many years. There are still things that you can't automate at the moment, even with AI, unless you're very advanced. That's a different conversation, maybe for a different webinar. But certainly just the basic operations and operating model, you can have staff that come in if you've got a big project, but then at the natural conclusion of that, they can move on, and you don't lose all of that information because it's actually contained in your systems. Also, from a humanistic point of view, all of those jobs that are repetitive, mundane, boring, they don't motivate people, and they're error prone, they're gone. Right, your staff are actually elevated. The roles and responsibilities of your staff can be elevated to using much more of their high value skills. The contribution, their contribution that helps create value within the business, like focusing on customer service, troubleshooting, developing new products or services, or actually coming up with performance improvement initiatives, rather than just doing that admin work that is completely soul destroying. So that's the other one. And the final one is about data. Having really good digital infrastructure helps you share, but at the same time safeguard your data. It makes your data more dependable, more consistent, more auditable, and it improves the performance of your business and makes sure that you are less likely to have data breaches, which is actually a quite serious issue nowadays with GDPR. So those are the key barriers, and also, if you do it the right way, the key enablers to growth.
That was fantastic.
I hope that wasn't too much, too quickly.
That was perfect, really detailed, and I think it really goes to show, a really fantastic way of going through, your business journey so far, and how you have scaled up, and some of the, the barriers, but how you've overcome them, and some great lessons for the entrepreneurs on the call. Just before I ask my first question, I just want to make everybody clear that there is a Q&A function on this webinar, so please put in your questions for Elizabeth. We do have time at the end to go to your questions from the audience, so get your thinking caps on, and we're looking forward to reaching those, speaking to those later. I'd also like to say a quick hello to Greg Carl Langley, who's joined us from Coots, and we'll be kind of supporting this Q&A today. How are you doing, Greg?
Everyone, very good, thanks. Great for that. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm a head of entrepreneurs at Coots. Elizabeth is a client of ours and has very kindly agreed to come and talk to us, and we're going to hear a bit more about some of her thoughts and dig into those points that she's raised.
Yeah, definitely. I think my first question, as we kick off, you mentioned quite a few times there around your core values as a company and as a business, and I think that's becoming a lot more important for startups and entrepreneurs as they try to seek a purpose for what they do, and as they grow their team and scale, to really have something to kind of hold on to. I guess it would be great if you could go into a little bit more detail about what yours are, either as both as an individually and with Informed Solutions as well.
Okay. I think that as an entrepreneur, you do tend to find that they come together. because the DNA of your business starts, it isn't now. I mean, fortunately, the culture of Informed in the business is much bigger and much more diverse than me. But, you know, as the founder of the company, you tend to find you bring that with you. So the things that motivate me and the things that I advocate for, I still do, is a level playing field, giving people access to opportunities, empowerment, social and economic empowerment. If you are prepared to work hard, if you're prepared to invest, if you're prepared to be of service to others, you deserve opportunities. I'm really, really motivated by that. And also when you are successful, you know, when you have the privilege of being successful and you have influence, give back to others. Remember that little bit of humility. Remember that you started off as well and that you needed help, and that when people took your phone calls, you know, you did the best you could. I mean, you can't always solve every problem for everyone, but try to be a good person, try to be a good business. And you know, a business has regrettably sometimes focuses very much on the bottom line, but being a purpose, there's a few buzzwords that float around, but if we scratch the surface of those buzzwords and we understand what lies beneath it, we stand for two things: purpose beyond profit. Of course, we're here to make a profit. All of my staff want to be well paid. You know, and you don't keep good staff if you don't value them and pay them well. But actually, it's got to be more than that, and that goes back to the point of loyalty as well. People will stay with you, and they'll be genuinely prepared to have their careers invested in you if they believe that you stand for more than just the money. Of course, money is a valuable resource. It's an enabler of a lot of things, but we have programs, for example, from Informed Academy that we run. We run for clients, we run for graduates at the moment that do not have jobs. We've run personal resilience masterclasses, because again, we have personal and professional resilience masterclasses as part of our Informed Academy, and we've made those available to other people. We are part of our local communities, our chambers of commerce. I'm doing this for you now as well, because I know that it's really tough out there. But, you know, if we work together, we're stronger together as well. Those are the key principles of our company.
That's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Greg, I don't know if you have a starter question you wanted to throw in.
Yeah, it was something that really came across to me when you were talking was how important the structure of your company has been for your success. So these concepts of the core team and elasticity. Mm-hmm. You know, I've seen businesses where they've gained significant funding or have been acquired and have had to grow crazily quickly, like from 5 people to 150 in 3 months. And it just blows the mind of the founders, because they're no longer that little core team on their own. They're gathering people, growing. They suddenly have to hire a people manager and all that kind of stuff. Where's that elasticity really helped you guys maybe earlier on? And have you seen any examples of businesses where they haven't had that elasticity and have lost out, or things have really gone wrong for them?
That's a big question. So the way that we have architectured our elasticity is anything that is a core skill that helps us manage commercial risk and delivery risk. So the architects, the designers, etc., service designers, they're our people. We do complement and supplement them, okay? But the leadership function is with our people. Anything that is a commercial commitment to a client, part of our ethics is you keep your word to your client. So if we've made a commercial commitment, it's our staff that are actually making that. Where we have the next layer of our associates, and they're all vetted and security cleared associates and contractors, is to add practitioner capability, practitioner skills, practitioner bandwidth to enable us to scale. Okay, and the third level is subcontracting. So we have both nearshore and we have UK based as well, which is we literally say, you know, please build to spec. and we have the ability to put that through a quality gateway process. And it's a close working partnership, by the way. We use integrated infrastructure. As I said, we do IT ourselves. So we have shared infrastructure where we can see what they're doing, and they work with us, and we have shared environments. And so they're almost an extension of ourselves. There is a wall around that. They can't access all of our systems, obviously. But they are literally there to do that much more transactional stuff as well. And so that's how we've got the three layers, and that's how we've architectured it. And it allows us to really scale very quickly, but the risk management, the commitments, and the more enduring aspects of the business, they are staff positions.
Yeah, and that seems so vital, that particularly that client relationship part of the core as well. Because if they're dealing with different people the whole time, I guess the values are so important to you, and they all come together, don't they? All these little bits. The core team means you keep the core values, means you keep the core clients and the trust that's so important in your industry.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I guess, you've mentioned that both your clients have been private and public sector. Would you say that, your structure changes dependent on whether it's a public or private sector contract, or do you maintain that structure?
We look at cultural. We look at cultural fit. So we try to, for key people, we make sure that the relationship is really great as well, that there's an empathy there at the leadership level. And of course, their operating, their governance model will be different. So and all of that is digitized as well. We have processes, etc., and methodologies around how we run projects, so that we can accommodate and flex around what the client wants. So yeah, we're very adaptable in that way. The way that we work, to illustrate the way that we work, for example, globally with Shell International, is very, very different, for example, than the way that we would work with the Ministry of Justice. And we need to respect that, and we need to be adaptive, and our systems do that.
Of course, yeah, completely. Yeah. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with, quite a lot of them are kind of quite private sector based, and may not have considered the public sector as something to target. I guess, what would your kind of words of advice be, or kind of how to get on the front foot in order to even start thinking about targeting that as a prospective client, or and how to kind of secure those sales?
Well, it's interesting because it's a whole market. It's not just one client. I mean, we're talking about, government is a phenomenal spender. There's very good reasons why the large corporations have government clients. There's a hint there, there's a clue there, okay? And it's just another set of rules. I'm an analyst, and I'm an economist and a computer science person. So even though I'm a very outgoing person, I'm very, very analytical. You just figure it out, and you accept that you're going to bid for business and fail a few times. But that's the lesson. That's the value of learning. And when it opens up, and if you do a good job once you've opened up, your reputation gets known. As with private sector, there's a real network in there, and you just need to tap into that network. And provided you do a good job, then your name gets known. And there are also public sector awards as well that suppliers don't get put forward for, but your clients do. And if your client wins the award, you bask in reflected glory, and everybody knows about it. So, just be wise. And I know there's a lot of criticism about working with government, but I'll be honest with you, working with some of our very large corporates is no different. It depends what your client base is like. Okay, they really do vet you, and they really do expect a proper proposal.
Yeah.
There's been an area that I'd like to touch on that you mentioned around access to finance, I guess, and choices around finance. I often talk about, and this is really simplifying, but two core types of entrepreneur. The traditional entrepreneur that sets up their business and tends to grow it for 20, 30 years, grows it organically using profits and reinvesting them. And at the end of it, still owns 80, 90% of it because they've grown it through there. But it's a much slower path to growth, as you talked about. And then I talk about the zeitgeisty entrepreneur who is aiming to grow, possibly exit within 5 to 10 years. Whether they'll be able to or not is a different matter. Going out, raising external funding, to grow the revenue line, but maybe not get to profitability as early and maybe never. That's been a lot more possible as the UK crowd, angel and VC market has evolved. I'm interested in your thoughts around where the entrepreneur like zeitgeist is currently, because there is such a focus on like blitz scaling, especially in tech.
Yep. It depends on what you are offering. Services, that's hard to do. Okay. Services is about building competence as well as building capability. And so if you have a look at the companies that are very credible, sometimes they bring themselves into disrepute, but they're very credible. They are that more slow burn. If you're tech, you can accelerate if you've got a product. I think you have to get your ducks in order. I think you really have to have a good product strategy, really rigorous product strategy and roadmap for that. I think you need to look at the your talent to be able to manage that development of that product. Otherwise, the product can get really choppy if you don't have a really good architect and there's stability in some of your key roles, that vision. Okay, that continuity, then you just have people coming in and out and helping you build stuff. You end up finding out the product just doesn't hold together. I've seen that a few times with rapid scale up on product. And you need to really learn how to collaborate with others because almost from day one, because you are already selling and delivering through others. So you need to have slightly different mix of ingredients. The ingredients are the same, but proportions are probably a bit different. Definitely have your alliance and your partnership model lined up. Definitely have your product strategy and product development roadmap lined up, and definitely have the core of your team, your product architects and those people that you know are committed, they've got skin in the game, because otherwise your product just basically unravels and then you're going to have a problem. You won't be able to sustain that scale up journey. If it's a mixture of, which is ours, a mixture of services and platforms, then you do need to make sure that there's substance to it, because you're responsible for delivering an outcome for a client, not just selling them a product. So that is actually the short answer. So, sorry, Greg.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. Thanks.
That's all right.
Great stuff. I think as well, I'd also like to touch on, your experiences at raising finance. And you mentioned back in the early 90s around, being a female entrepreneur and trying to raise investment and really struggling at that time, despite being in the tech space. Is this something that you still experience today? I mean, we've worked with a number of female entrepreneurs who do kind of, do have bad experiences, and I guess what would your one word of advice, or how can we as a society and with those in our network that we meet, how can we support them to kind of avoid this segregation and improve opportunities for female investors?
Yeah, that's an incredibly relevant question, a very big question, but a very sensitive question. So I'll answer it in my authentic way. I am a very values-driven person, but I also know to conserve energy. I don't take on every battle. And my dad was an engineer. My dad was a very big influence in my life. And I'm rather like my father, actually. I'm more like my father than my mother. I'm a chip off the old block. And my father used to say to me, especially when I joined, very traditional, my first two jobs were very traditional sectors. We're talking about Unilever, manufacturing, and Hawke Pacific, aeronautical engineering. And I was working with aeronautical engineers on things like, servicing systems and stuff like that. And I was the only woman in the whole department. And my dad said, Liz, just develop a thick skin. And he said, and also don't beat your head against a brick wall. If prejudice is a really interesting thing. There's a difference between unconscious bias, when someone just doesn't realize that society has programmed them that way, and some people that have got really deeply embedded prejudices. And if I give people the benefit of the doubt, and if they don't realize they've said something a bit off, I'll say, did you really just say that to me? I'm not confrontational, but I do call it out. And therefore, if that person is in the former category, they've just got an unconscious bias, it makes them stop and think. I go, oh, actually, I probably shouldn't have said that. But if someone is deeply prejudiced and they just don't want to, move away. Save your energy and find a tribe of people that actually see you for your capability, see you for your values, see you for the hard work, see for the fact that you want to contribute, and keep going. And then going back to the when you are successful, make sure that you then use your voice. When you're successful is when your voice is the strongest. Sometimes when in the earlier stages of my career, the more I tried to explain myself, the more I tried to explain that I was really competent and capable and committed and I would work hard, the more it sounded defensive. Right? So you've got to know when to cut your losses. And then when you have the privilege, surround yourself with people that support you as much as you support them. That, Georgina, is my honest answer.
I've got something a bit aligned to that I just wanted to ask you about. So end of last year, I was hosting a virtual lunch with some female entrepreneurs that had been through exit, often of quite significant tech companies. And I was reading the report that came from this. I just noted down something one of them said that I wanted to ask you about, which is she was saying that as a woman, I wasn't taught to trust myself. I was taught to canvass everyone else's opinions, look to experts and take what they said. But the clangers I made in my career were when I didn't trust my gut. It's probably only much later you can look back and reflect on that. Is that something that resonates with you? Have you got any advice for female founders around that?
That's really interesting. Wow, how do I feel about that? I think, I think your father, my dad, was a really, really big part of my confidence. Because if you look at social conditioning, which is what you're talking about, Greg, you know, that is all pervasive. But if the key man in your life, your dad, says, you know what, you're smart, and actually you've got a really strong work ethic. And he used to take me into work sometimes and he'd say, I do this and I do that. And I had that belief. And so I can see how that would happen because I come from a very large family and I see a lot of my female colleagues who are really, really competent, and they do lack that self-belief and that self-trust, and they believe things that are external to them. And I think that with age, you do learn, hopefully. But in my case, I didn't often feel that as strongly, even though others tried to make me feel that. And it's really interesting because I think we had an earlier conversation to say when a woman, a female, particularly in a traditional or high-tech sector, is presenting, you get challenged on all the risks, you get challenged on all the pitfalls, and they deep dive on all of that. And I'm a yellow hat thinker. If anyone knows about de Bono's hats, I'm a yellow hat analyst. And so I'm always looking for the opportunity. And yet they're going into these deep dives. And I go, yep, we're going to mitigate that risk. We've got these systems, we've got these processes, we've got the professional indemnity insurance, we're sorted. But they emphasize that because honestly, I believe I'm a female. Whereas when my male colleagues present, it's really interesting how they get far more excited about the opportunity. And I observe, I'm a real observer. And so that's why I really think diversity is important, because you are balancing not just your own skills and your own contribution, but you're also balancing how others perceive you and will interact with you. And if you have a diverse team, there's always someone on the team that can handle that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. If anyone wants to, if anyone hasn't heard about that point before around pitches, I think that it's in the business school report, it's called promotion versus prevention questioning. Really interesting one to Google and have a little read about strange behavior. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I think we've actually got quite a few questions from the audience, so I hope you don't mind if I go to a couple of those to start with. I think a really interesting question came through from Andrew Bennett. Great talk. I wonder what difference you would have found as a startup now instead of in 1992, so far as the financial impact of a recession versus the current pandemic and lockdown.
Oh, Andrew, that's heavy lifting question. Okay, I really think starting a business or scaling up a business, if you can get your ducks lined up in a recession, is awesome. You are toughened by fire. Okay, so the differences now and then is obviously the opportunities in tech at the moment for us is much more substantial. In 1992, it was much more traditional. And people would automate things quite small, quite self-contained. Budgets were always a second choice. So, for example, if a business was scaling in 1992, and I have an anecdote about this, and obviously can't name the client to protect the guilty, but they were much more interested in buying, lots of equipment, stuff, assets. They saw assets as trucks and equipment and lathes and things like that, than digital and IT. IT is an enabler, as I went through before. So now there are real opportunities, much more opportunities for innovation. I think culturally, organizations are actually eager to adopt innovation to enable them to stay relevant, to deliver their services in a relevant way, to deliver efficiencies when margins are being squeezed. How do you protect your profit margin if your prices are being squeezed, and reduce costs? How do you, even now, everything has to work distributed. All of us are working remotely, so there are opportunities in the market that were never there in 1992. And I remember in 1992, some of our biggest profits were actually the millennium. I mean, those of you that have been around for a while, some of the least cost sensitive projects that we ran was in 1999 to make sure that software didn't fall over in 2000 in case some developer had hard coded 1999 into software. I mean, it's inconceivable the breadth of opportunities available nowadays. But it's not just for tech, it's for all types of products. Buyers are buying different things, and in that market there is an opportunity.
Of course, I think it's been fantastic to see, with some of the entrepreneurs that I work with, what opportunities they found through this pandemic. And I think one thing on reflection, it's obviously, people feel, it's quite a difficult time for a number of different people and their families, but there can be opportunity out of all of this. And I think, that gives us hope for the future. So yeah, great answer. Thank you.
And culturally also, Georgina, everyone, the language, all you need to do is listen to the language. And, it was much more traditional. Now people are in a perverse way, are less risk averse. They're more prepared to be open-minded and try new things. The languages of new beginnings. Innovation is just, a word on every main board's agenda. This is huge potential. Just see the growth opportunity in that, rather than, and I know that it's hard. I'm not trying to diminish anyone's experience on how difficult it is at the moment, but also be optimistic about the future.
Of course. Another question from our audience, from Samir. Hi, Elizabeth. Wonderful and very inspiring to hear from you. My question is, what is better, a strategic investor or a smart investor?
I think they're not mutually exclusive. A smart investor will be strategic. A very transactional investor will have pretty assertive expectations, and/or they may not have realistic expectations. Okay, so I think a smart investor is a strategic investor, unless you have a very, very clear game plan, and you are a serial entrepreneur and you've done this a few times, and you're in your groove. Look for someone that can add extra dimensions to your partnership other than just finance.
Of course. Fantastic. We've had a number of different questions come through around the topic of diversity and targeting and kind of improving that across when you hire, and also within your leadership team as well. How do you support diversity in your own hiring process and your own leadership board as well?
I think if it's in your culture, you just do it. It's really funny how a lot of people have to have targets and things like that. I mean, really interestingly, we had 67% of our technical intake of graduates last year were women, because when you get known as being a company that is genuinely fair, that is genuinely egalitarian, that genuinely has clear optics, the word gets out. And I think pretty much all of the top graduates from computer science and some of the tech streams through our academic alliance, we're their first employer of choice. Okay, you need to work through it. I mean, I'm not going to tell people how to run their business. What we've done is, I'm multicultural. I'm a female. I've experienced firsthand the pointy edge of discrimination. My mum is Latin American and my father is Spanish, and so I've always been very sensitive to discrimination, and therefore I would just never hire someone that was like that. And you create that culture, and then the word gets out, and you just attract your own tribe. You attract people that are really clever, they're hardworking, they're motivated, they've got good values, and you build a business together. It's quite enjoyable, actually.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I think, you know, if you harbour those values and that's what you practice, the way that you hire will reflect that for sure, definitely. Another question as well that's just come in, quite an interesting one from Ajit. Very insightful talk, Elizabeth. I was just wondering how you and your business managed to stay adaptable to market and environmental changes, especially as your business scaled.
We do a lot of market listening. So at our board meetings, which are run quarterly, our formal board meetings, we make sure that we receive all the feedback from clients, from staff, etc. We have annual client relationship meetings where we talk about more strategic issues that are important to the client, whatever they may be. If it's the green recovery, if it's diversity, if it's skills development, we talk at that level with our clients, not just at the functional level to say, hey, are our people doing well, etc. That gives us input into making better decisions at main board level. And we obviously participating in external communities. We're part of industry communities and panels. We have a number of our people sitting as external examiners at some universities, so we know what's coming up through young people, what young people value. We also sit on other universities as part of supporting course development, so that we can help universities refine their curricula. We just get out there and we do it. I mean, you won't be able to do that as a startup, but as soon as your business starts maturing, it goes back to that purpose beyond profit. You know, just make sure that you make a provision for that, because as you know, I think Georgina, you were saying before, increasingly your customers, your clients are noticing whether you're just in it for what you want or whether you are part of solving some of the bigger problems in society and the environment.
Of course. Greg, I wondered if you had any more questions. I've got plenty stored up here.
No, I think let's carry on with the audience. Given they've
fantastic.
spent the time with us.
Yeah, of course. We've had quite a few come through on the topic of, you know, mental health, well-being and a work-life balance. You know, you're a really successful entrepreneur yourself, Elizabeth. Is there something, you know, any kind of parts of your routine that you hold true to, or any kind of things that you promote within your workforce as well to ensure that across your people?
Okay. Again, I'll answer that in two parts, if I may. As regards our people, the first thing we did when we went into national lockdown, we've got a really people-centered culture. I mean, our people is our business. Okay. So as soon as we went into lockdown, of course, people with a lot more experience, life experience under their belt, tended to be absorbed in the practicalities of their life, like homeschooling of children, etc. And that sort of gave them something to sink their teeth into. The people that were the most vulnerable were our young people. They didn't have things like that to get on with. They often also didn't have the privilege of a home with a garden. They might have been in a house share. They might have had, you know, sort of very small accommodation. We just made sure we reached out to them. Excuse me. We just made sure we reached out to them. We have already a buddy system, and that means that people can reach out to any of their colleagues. Buddies tend to be at a similar level of experience, so that they feel really relaxed in having authentic conversations. Then they have a coach who is someone that is a few years ahead, but still relatable to them. As well as their line manager, which in some cases can have significantly more experience. So we have those three touch points. And we ran master classes on personal resilience to make sure that people understood the mechanics of what makes you a strong, emotionally strong person, and to make you realize that you're not alone, that everybody has these challenges and everyone has these insecurities and anxieties, and that it's okay. And that the more important thing is to talk to somebody, anybody. Talk to your friends or your family. If it's work related, talk to your buddy, talk to your coach, talk to your line manager. And everyone's got my mobile number. All of my staff have my mobile number, and nobody abuses it. Maybe they're a little bit too scared, but actually, sincerely, I did get a couple of text messages, and I immediately called them back and I said, hey, are you okay? So that's number one, about your people, and be honest about it. Make sure that you clear enough time in the diary rather than just ask a token question, which the person on the other end genuinely knows you're not interested in listening to the answer in. Lean in. As regards myself, sorry, I've got a dry throat. I didn't know if I was going to be invited to do this, but I've got, because I gave this gave me an opportunity to reflect on myself as well, my life lessons as an entrepreneur, and how I've been able to run a marathon rather than just a sprint. I mean, going back to what Greg was saying before, you know, we can all have our plans that we're going to exit in 5 years or whatever it is, but actually life has a way of you know, intervening, and sometimes you've just got to be a little bit more open and adaptive. So my life lessons as an entrepreneur is the first thing is have a positive, optimistic mindset. Yes, there are always going to be problems, but think about the opportunity and think about where you can grow, and where your business can grow, where your people can grow. Okay. I'm a people person, but I balance that with critical thinking, and I've got super clear optics. That's probably one of my superpowers. I really look at who to trust and what to trust, what information to trust. And one of my mottos, which my team are probably sick of me saying, is I try to be everyone's friend, but I've learned to be nobody's fool. And I make no apologies if something isn't right for me. I'm happy to give a bit of an explanation as a sign of respect for the person. I'll say, I'm really sorry, that doesn't work for me because, and then I mean it. And so I have good boundaries around that, and I try not to let myself feel taken advantage of. As I've grown the business, I've always developed a strategy of, and this is a thing from digital, it's about minimum viable product, not to boil the ocean, not to over-engineer stuff. I look at doing things in a contained way, but I do it to an excellent standard. So therefore I can keep moving forward. Okay, and that's just, and that's how I temper my professionalism. So I call it version 1.0. So my minimum viable product is version 1.0 of everything and anything. But then when I execute that to a high standard, and I don't have to go back and keep doing rework, and I don't have a lot of negative impact or collateral damage. I'm really clear about priorities. And then when I finish that priority, I prioritize the next thing, and I go back and repeat. And so therefore, I always feel I'm moving forward, even though, or I've got a plan to move it forward, even if I've had a bit of a setback. I'm also going back to Greg's point earlier. I also estimate for where we are, what we call our gradient, right? The rate at which we can absorb growth and the rate at which we can absorb change. And so therefore, I make sure that we pace ourselves and that our growth is actually a stretch, but it's an enjoyable journey. It's a bit like if any of you exercise. You know, when you go for a good run and you ache a bit, but you're not crippled for the next 2 weeks. I have taken my entrepreneurial journey on that basis. It's like, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to have a really good workout session. Yeah, I'm going to ache a little bit. So I'm going to have that a little gentle ache, but it's going to be perversely enjoyable, but I'm not going to damage myself to the point where I can't do anything, you know, for weeks afterwards because I'm just burnt out or my people are burnt out. So always check in with yourself and your people to say, right, what's that gradient? What's that rate at which we can stretch ourselves and do things? And going back to the more personal side of how I manage my stress levels, I take care of my diet. The first thing is I sleep. If you don't sleep properly, you don't make good decisions, and that is across the board. I eat well, even though I do have a problem with chocolate. I maintain my health. I check in with myself to say, how am I feeling about this? And I acknowledge that. And if something doesn't feel right, going back to that gut feel, I go, why? And analyze it. And I have a laugh. I have a wicked relationship with all of my colleagues. And sometimes it's dark humor, But one of the things I love, which is a bit sad at the moment, is I used to love walking around the office and just hearing the gales of laughter coming out from the offices. That is very uplifting as well. So that's how I can do a 20-odd year entrepreneurial journey and still enjoy it.
That's some great life lessons there. Thank you, Elizabeth, and something that, you know, hopefully I'd like to take on board as well, you know, yeah, I think we're all a sucker for some chocolate now and again. I'm good at, we've still got some time for a few more questions from the audience, so there's still loads more coming in, and to everybody watching today, please, you know, we're not quite finished yet, so please do get them in. I'm going to take a bit of a change in direction and some great kind of life lessons there. But got a question here from Stephen Miller that's just come in. What advice would you give SMEs for winning contracts with government and corporate organisations?
Slightly get on to find out how they procure. If they've got frameworks or panels where they've got pre-vetted suppliers, so that they do due diligence on you. So all of our large corporates and our government clients pre-vet you. They don't, just because they like you and just because you put some marketing literature on the table that sounds great, they're not going to give us, I'm talking about ourselves now, a contract. They put you through your paces. They really do due diligence on your capabilities. They talk to other clients and you get testimonials. Don't give them marketing literature. Professional procurement teams don't trust marketing literature. It's great to get known and to get your key messages out there, but make sure that you have more than just your pitch. Make sure that you know how to evidence your capability. Okay, and be persistent. I only half jokingly say to our younger people who go, yeah, but we're really good and we know how to do this and we know how to do that. Yes, but nobody's going to give you a multi-million-pound contract when they've only just met you or they don't know you. Trust is really important in business. Being known is really important in business. And also the fact that you're committing to getting to know them, getting to know how they procure, getting to know the things that are important to them. So for example, in government at the moment, they obviously want to, they want evidence that you're capable and competent, that you've got the right accreditations, that you've got the right insurances in place, that you have good governance and processes so that, you know, you can deliver reliably and you're not a high maintenance, you know, sort of supplier. That you know, if there is a that you've got good processes for relationship management as well as delivery management. You know, they will want to know those sorts of things, and that you have a narrative around that and you can evidence that. But then our big corporates are the same. The difference might be in culture. Okay, the difference might be in culture, but fundamentally the needs are similar, but how you have to show them is slightly different. If you're not dealing with big corporates, if you're dealing with smaller businesses, it's much quicker. You know, if somebody likes you, they sort of trust what you do, the stakes aren't too high, then you're more likely to get business quicker. So consider what kind of customer will get you off the starting blocks as opposed to what customers you want to be able to mature your business into, so that you can take on more sophisticated customers as well, like corporations and government.
I think on a similar line as well, just reflecting back what some of the things you said earlier, because I was thinking about how you, I presume very purposefully, are in a very high trust area of industry that has very high barriers to entry, which is great for informal solutions. And you were talking about those points around, you know, learn through applying for some of the contracts that you just don't know that you're going to get that foot in the door through the feedback from those contracts you don't win, and then building the reputation through awards. And I presume as well some of the ISO standards that you've met, that's the, I guess, nailed on way to be able to prove to business, or the simple way. I'm sure it's not simple to get them, but at least it's then a badge. You can say, hey, we meet this standard. That will presumably tick a box for your compliance people somewhere, rather than have to try and talk them through everything that you do in a more manual way.
That is a fascinating question, Greg. And what I'll answer that in two parts. It took us 3 years to break into nuclear. So when I say you've got to be strategic in the markets that you want to get into, Okay, it took us 3 years to get into nuclear. And yes, a lot of that was accreditations, that you knew how to do certain things and that you could work in secure environments, that you knew how to do data sciences to their standards. There are special sciences, data science standards for nuclear data. And we were very systematic, very thoughtful, tick, 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 tick. We bid for work and they'd come back and say, yes, but you don't have this. Got it, tick, 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 cracked. 3 years, nuclear. NHS. Okay, so one of the interesting things about risk management and risk mitigation is if there's a standard, it's actually relatively, and I'm not diminishing it, it's not, I didn't say it's hard work, it is hard work, but it's relatively straightforward because it's rules-based, right? You work this way and you can evidence that you work that way and you're audited and you can prove compliance, bingo, tick the box. However, with the NHS, a lot of that is subjective. So it's not just evidence-based and compliance-based. It is also the double of it's very nuanced, and it's about subject matter competence and clinical data and how to interpret stuff. And we work with artificial intelligence with clinical data. And it took us 5 years to crack that one, but we got there, right? Because you've got to understand what you're looking at, which is what I talk about clear optics. Is it just evidencing you've got the badge, the kite mark, the standard, or is it really understanding the subject matter and the nuances of their culture and connecting with them and giving them those reassurances? Trust is on both things. Trust that you understand how sensitive what we do is and how nuanced and complicated it is, and trust that you work to a certain standard and know which balance it is for which type of customer.
Super interesting.
Great stuff. I think we've got time for a couple more questions from the audience. So I'm going to go to one from Rachel, which kind of, I guess, expands on this topic a little bit more. But any advice on the transition from UK to global audiences in the digital arena? How do you upscale quickly to meet the demand and stand out to global partners that may not be aware of your brand but are interested in your product?
Very good. Okay. All right. Three key elements to that. The first one is go digital. You want to go global. And if you design an architecture infrastructure the right way, it'll operate in the US, it'll operate in the Australasia, it'll operate in China. Okay, maybe in China. At the moment, it's a bit more complicated, but because it's digital. As long as it supports multi-currency, multiple language sets, multiple time zones, etc., you're sorted. Okay. Designed the right way up front. As regards getting building capability, the second element to that is actually, particularly in the current climate, you can't move your people around. And also the reality is that lots of countries are becoming more nationalistic. They want to create jobs for their people. There's a huge level of economic impact. And so they want to make sure that if they're doing business with a foreign company, that foreign company, repetitive, is giving back. That foreign company is actually contributing to their local economy, to their local jobs creation, to their skills development. Okay, so we're pivoting at the moment around that. We're pivoting a lot more towards working with and through alliance partner network. Okay, so that when we have a proposition in other countries, in other jurisdictions, then actually it's a joint proposition. And that is far more attractive. That lands a lot better over there because there's something in it for them as well, rather than just the transaction. Okay, so that's number two. Number three is, I think, how you get known. And I would look at making sure that you use the Department of International Trade. As some of you may know, I'm an export champion for the Department of International Trade, particularly the Northern Powerhouse, because our headquarters is here in Greater Manchester. And they have got a phenomenal network. And one of the and you educate your trade advisor. They connect you with their resources. They connect you with their resources anywhere in the world you need them to be. You have a local agent anywhere you need them to be. And I think one of my one of the most uplifting things that happened for me is when we got a letter of introduction to a prospective client, which became an actual client in Australia, with the Crown device on the top. it was the UK government inviting this company to meet with us. And do you know what? 99.9% of the times, if you do it the right way, nobody says no. What you do once you've got your foot in the door, it's up to you. Okay, have your story, have your proposition. If it's appropriate, have your local agent and your local partner and tell them a great story that inspires them. But you get that foot in the door in that introduction. So definitely use the Department of International Trade. They have really scaled up themselves, knowing that Brexit was looming, and they've got the capability to support you. That's how you get known.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I guess as we draw this session to a close, I know it's quickly coming up to 11 o'clock, I guess. Greg, do you have any final questions for our guest?
No, I think that's been a huge amount of incredibly insightful advice. Thanks so much for joining us, Elizabeth. It's been incredibly helpful, even for me. I don't have a business, so.
Yes, just want to reiterate Greg's thanks. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us, Elizabeth. I mean, sharing first off your journey and going through, those, not just 5 but 6 kind of key barriers that you face and how you've overcome them, and then to talk a little bit more about diversity and your values within your team as well as kind of targeting and curating new clients and projects as well. So you've given us so much, and as Greg just mentioned, I've learned so much as well from this session, and there's lots to take away. I hope you've enjoyed this morning as well.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me as well. It's 2021. And let's, I guess, forward plan for new beginnings. It's quite exciting.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you. And just before we wrap up, I just need to just go on to confirm some of your feedback. So it's been great to have you all with us today. We've had some fantastic questions that have come through, but just before we close, it would be great to get your feedback. So please scan the QR code, or there is a link just underneath that you can type into any browser and just answer a couple of questions around what you thought, and then score us from 1 to 10. Obviously, the answers closest to 10 would be great. We'll be sending some follow-up thoughts and a summary of today's session and some details about our next An Audience With event, which will be inviting the founder and COO of Social Chain, Dominic McGregor, in midway through February. So looking forward to the next one on the 10th. And it just leaves me to say a huge thank you to Greg from joining us from Coots, Elizabeth, our esteemed guest, who's been absolutely brilliant today, and you there, the team behind the scenes for making this run smoothly, and you, our audience, for being fantastic listeners and providing us some great questions. And as Elizabeth mentioned, it's 2021, there's opportunities ahead, and it's exciting. So I wish you all the best for today and the months to come. Thank you very much, everybody.